It's funny sometimes how different our assumptions can be when compared with the actual experiences itself. Before I traveled to Philippines earlier this year, I had a fight with my mom. She had just found out that I had booked a flight to Philippines. Shocked, terrified and against me going, she begged me not to. She was convinced that Philippines would be nothing but lurking danger. Earlier that month, she had read news about kidnappings that had happened there and was desperately worried. Despite my attempts at explaining why I thought the possibility of such a kidnapping was low, she remained unconvinced. She refused to listen, convinced that my choice was reckless and that I was purposely doing it to spite her. I ended up going anyways and the entire experience was nothing short of amazing. The food was absolutely exquisite, the views spectacular, and the people were so incredibly friendly and accommodating that I felt right at home. I loved every part of the experience. It's a country I'd want to visit again and again. The assumptions my mom had about me getting kidnapped, held against my will and ransomed for money never did happen. Could it have? Of course. But it wasn't likely. The kidnappings my mom read about in the news is mostly in the Mindanao part of the Philippines, at 1036 kilometers, 644 miles, away from Manila where I stayed. Could the terrorists have decided to go from Mindanao to Manila and start kidnapping foreigners there? Sure, it could have, but it really wasn't likely. The chances of it happening would have been about as slim as a terrorist half a country away suddenly coming to my city to cause harm. I don't want to be risk. It's not something I'd ever wish for, but sometimes taking risks become necessary for the very sake of living life. If I did all I could to avoid risk, I'd lose myself and the meaning to my life. I'd be constantly afraid of everything. Too terrified to ever drive because I wouldn't want to risk being in a car accident, too afraid to do anything physically because I wouldn't want to risk sports injuries or broken bones, too afraid to ever walk on the streets in fear of getting hit by a sideswiped car, too afraid to eat sashimi or wear steak in fear of parasites, or too afraid to be in any relationship at all because I'd be too scared of being hurt. It wouldn't really be a life worth living. The only thing I could do in my situation was to calculate those risks. It meant looking at data as well as drawing from my own past experiences, and asking for advice in order to determine whether or not it made sense for me to take that risk. And to me, those risks were worth taking. Traveling has its own set of risks, similar to the risks I was already facing at home. It just seemed a lot riskier because it's what I've never experienced before. A new country, one that I'm not as familiar with and know little about, will forever feel risky when compared to the experiences from my own country. It's all in perspective. Most of the risks I'd find scary in a country is probably considered normal, possibly even mundane and impossible for the locals living in that country. The risks I'd see as the foreigner will undoubtedly always be higher than that of the locals because I lack the knowledge, the experience, the culture and often the language I would have gotten from being born and raised in that country. From all of this, what I've realized is that sometimes it's okay to make an assumption, to draw conclusions based on what I know, but there's never an excuse not to delve deeper, to put in the effort and seeing whether or not those assumptions are justified. What I hear and what I'm told might not be the full story, so if I draw conclusions based off of that and blindly assume, I'll never be able to see the world for what it is. I'd be forever stunted by the very limitations I've set for myself because of these baseless assumptions. My assumptions can never replace real-life experiences. To do so is a risk in itself, and how often I make assumptions is what will determine the magnitude of the quality in which I live my life.